Hey, we are live. We are live. Yeah, we are live. You know, I said,
we're not matching your energy. Is that what the problem is there, Russ?
No, it's just, I was getting kind of excited and clapping and it didn't amount to anything from you guys. I thought there'd be like a little bit of energy here, because not only we're going to have our normal Snow the Goalie listeners who are the best in the business, but we're also going to have a lot of people who are first time viewers and listeners. And here I am just kind of getting going, and let's re-rack this. Really quick before we get started, as we are over 100 people live now on the YouTube and Facebook feeds. We're not doing the show at 6 a.m. So that's a market improvement in the belief of some, I guess, right? That we're doing this at night and not in the morning. Bundy, out of curiosity, I know that you were at Ice Wars, but would you have gotten up at 6 a.m. the other day to do the show with us or no?
No.
That's all I needed.
That was simple enough, right?
Well, it's like, I'm going to get up at 6. First of all, I got to look at both your mugs. And then, not that I'm much better when I got to stare at myself in the mirror, but I know you got to like brainwash yourself out by like 6 a.m., get on the ball, have your notes done, be prepared. It's like I said, boy, they're mongrel hours, man. Like, you got to get up.
Mongrel hours. That's
I got it wrong.
Mongrel hours.
Damn it, I got it wrong in that tweet. I put moron.
I will tell you though, flying out, you guys will appreciate this. I left Thursday, and the flight, we were in the air at 6 a.m. and out of Philly, and that means that I was up a lot earlier. So I dealt with it that day, and the packed airport helped.
How was Ice Wars, Bundy?
Fucking awesome, Anthony. You know what? It's really a good group of guys. I mean, I go off a lot for the camaraderie. I get called on to go broadcast it, and it's really been a lot of fun. There's a lot of good people that go out. The fighters are great. They're great, hockey players, but we have a good crowd. It's like I said, it's maybe not the same crowd that you get at a ballet, but it's Ice Wars, so you're not going to get a ballet crowd there.
I hope those taking odds on the Bundy bomb had the under.
That's
in 2 minutes. Right. Like the national anthem is longer. Right?
Yes.
When you bet that at the Super Bowl, like the national anthem is longer than it took for Bundy to hit the Bundy bomb today.
That's exactly right. All right, I think we're probably good to go here. It looks like we have a good amount of people here, so I'm pretty satisfied.
All right, go ahead. Do your initial.
Yeah. Thing. We also have to make sure that we shout out our sponsor for today's episode. We've got a sponsor this week, and we have more to come, from what I've gathered, which is just swell here on the Only Flyers podcast. So we'll make sure that we touch on that as well. I'm just trying to get the, there was that one little loving, that's why, because I was accidentally downloading the wrong file. There we go. All right. So we'll rock and roll. Here we go, guys. There it is. And we'll throw this little clip on the screen. Here we go. As we get excited, everybody out there who's joining us live on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, thank you for joining us. It's game time.
This is Dan Hilferty. Welcome to Snow the Goalie. You're in for a treat.
That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, oh yes. Welcome to Snow the Goalie, the Only Flyers podcast, People's Podcast, Players Podcast, Prognosticators Podcast, PLA Podcast, Papers Podcast, the Only Flyers Podcast. I'm Russ Joy on Twitter at JoyOnBroad. The man in the middle, Chris Therien, Bundy on Twitter at CTherien6, and the man, the propagandist on the right, Anthony SanFilippo, who you can find on Twitter at AntSanPhilly. Boys, we've got a special show for people. I want to do a couple of housekeeping things. One, we've got this interview tonight. We will go through this on the backside of the interview. We'll just do a couple of housekeeping notes. We will be back later this week with a much deeper dive into this interview and like any news and notes that come up in Flyers world. But we didn't want to have people here on a Monday night for an hour and a half or 2 hours. So interview today, we'll do a recap and we'll do some other news and notes on the Flyers later this week. So that's number one. Bundy, I wanted to know, and for those who are listening in the podcast feed after the fact, how was Ice Wars 3 in Wyoming this past weekend? As
I said earlier in the show, and I'm going to have to say it again, it was fucking awesome. And I loved every second of it. Just a great group of guys, great, an interesting venue. I've never been to Wyoming. Very close to Colorado, but I've never been into the Cowboy State, and it's a Cowboy State. It really is. But I had a blast. Just really an enjoyable event, being around really good people. Scott Parker was out there, Eric Goddard, Mike Brown, former guys that had played in the league. And it was just cool. It's always cool seeing some of your former brethren and getting back around some of the boys that are still younger than me, but had a good time and glad to be home back on the show and seeing both your mugs.
Anthony, you look like you're ready to say something.
Well, I'm waiting for Ice Wars 4 to come to Philadelphia. That's what I'm
That's
waiting
right.
for.
We're working on. I promise you guys, we talk about a lot some of that stuff as we come in. But yeah, I mean it's a place that needs to get out in Philly. And you know what? I'll tell you this: who wins Ice Wars?
The fans.
Philly kid.
The actual
right.
winner you meant. Oh, I thought,
yeah,
I thought you were just asking in
a
general.
Philly kid, Ryan Devine, went in and he mopped the floor. This is a guy that just started fighting not long ago in the senior leagues and stuff. He's from King of Prussia, and he did this. It was like with relative ease. The former gym teacher was almost like that Warrior story. You know, the movie with Nick Nolte and the two brothers ended up fighting. One guy was a gym teacher. Anyway, this guy goes through it. But I'm thinking, like, King of Prussia, like, I don't know what we're going to get out of this because there's some Western Canadians that are just savage. And no, I mean, he just absolutely changed the face of Ice Wars. And it was impressive. Athletic, big, strong. Man, he could chuck him. Thanks for asking, Russ and Ant.
You know what? That's what we're here for.
I love it in Philly. We'd love to bring it here.
I think at some point we're just going to have to fly out to wherever the next one is, and we're going to have to do our own pre and post, or we'll have to kind of do a lead up. I feel like that would be a lot of fun. So
guys.
We'll figure that out. But
promoting it, and I appreciate that.
I'm glad to hear that it went so well. And guys, I think before we dive into the interview, there are a few things we need to address about it. But before we do, we have a sponsor this week, and it's a sponsor that I think people are going to be very excited about. Because if you like the beach, and who doesn't like the beach? I don't know, maybe there are some people out there. But listen, if you like the shore, if you go to Ocean City, New Jersey, we're here to tell you about walkingtheboards.com. This is a weekly newsletter about everything going on in America's greatest family resort. Each week, Walking the Boards delivers directly to your inbox. It's free. Let's get that out of the way. It's free. All right. It's a newsletter that covers all of the biggest news and notes about Ocean City. It is free. There's news, events, food reviews, everything you need to know about Ocean City. So if you're one of those people who goes down to the shore once a year and you're like, I don't know, is that pizza place that we went to last year still open? Or is there a new place open? Is there a new ice cream joint we need to try? Is there like a new mini golf course? What do we go to? What are the locals talking about? What are people excited about? Then Walking the Boards is a place for you. It's read already by thousands of vacationers, renters, business owners. Walking the Boards is founded by Crossing Broad founder Kyle Scott. After he sold the site and left the company, he went on. He tried a few things. I knew about a few of the things, but this is the one that has really stuck. It's the thing that he's landed on. It's something he's passionate about. He bought a beach house down there. He's down there living the life. So you're getting somebody who's down there and covering all this. Not only can you find out about what's going on, but they also have another site and another newsletter, Shore Cribs. So if you're into real estate, if you're looking for a shore house, they got you covered there too. So Kyle and former Crossing Broad investor Mike Iredale, they got together to launch what they're calling Crossing Broad for the Shore. And they started in Ocean City. So one newsworthy piece to all of this, the guy that we're about to interview, or the guy that you're about to see the interview for, Dan Hilferty, he's going to be down in Ocean City on a float with Gritty at the Ocean City's Night in Venice parade on July 29th. So if you're going to be going down the shore, if you're going to be going down to Ocean City, make sure you subscribe to walkingtheboards.com. We'll have the description of this on YouTube right now, already has it. Again, it's free. Get all the biggest news and notes and everything that you could possibly want if you're going to go down the shore. Again, walkingtheboards.com. Thank you to them for sponsoring today's episode. Gentlemen, I think it's about time. There were a couple things that we wanted to address about this interview, and I'll take the brunt of one of them. I saw somebody question why it looks so professional, which we typically are not well known for. So the Flyers, and why don't you explain to people how we ended up getting Dan Hilferty in the first place?
Yeah, so I mean, the Flyers actually reached out and asked if we would be interested in talking to Dan. A lot of this, I think, if we're being honest, had to do with the fact that the other podcasts on Crossing Broadcast had David Edelman from the Sixers, who are on the podcast, and they were, and he was kind of pushing that new 76th place in Center City. And I feel like that was kind of like the reasoning why they wanted to have it on. And we said, we went back and forth on this because, we're not a Sixers podcast. We're not, about the, all about the arena. And we ultimately settled on, hey, listen, we'll do this interview and we'll talk about the arenas and stuff like that. But the first half of this interview has to be all for the Flyers. We are a Flyers podcast, and the majority of the people who listen to our show are Flyers fans. We got to talk about big things that happen with the team, and Dan's involvement with it, including the signing of Matvei Michkov, or the drafting of Matvei Michkov, and then the work that both Keith Jones and Danny Briere have done here in the first parts of their tenure, and they agreed to do it. Now, they had originally said, Russ, and I'll throw it back to you here, they had originally said, okay, yeah, come on down and do your normal tech stuff, and we were like, do we really want to just set up a couple of computers with a ring light and a cell phone, or maybe even have our one camera guy who works for Crossing Broad come in and just walk around in a circle and take video of us for 47 minutes? No. So you had an idea, and you actually threw it to them, and they responded.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest with people here. I'll take them behind the curtain a second, okay? Most of what we do here, video, the editing of the show, uploading, social, all that, like I'm responsible for that stuff. And when we did the Keith Jones interview and we did the Val Camilla one, I tried to rig a couple of things differently, and some of it worked and some of it didn't. And my big fear was, all right, well, if you go get Dan Hilferty, who I would say is probably the biggest guest we've had, it doesn't get any higher than the governor of the team. I know totally there were some agree. People. There were some people on Twitter who were like, "Oh, I thought you were going to get Gretzky," and I actually saw somebody who I think they were serious said, "I thought you guys were going to have the Michkov defection podcast." Now, I don't want to give somebody a hard time who listens to the show. We appreciate all of our listeners, but folks, if we want to get Gretzky, I'm sure that there's a way that we can get him at some point if we want to. Michkov is a whole other thing. Listen, if Michkov were to ever break his contract and come over, guys, would we eventually get Michkov? Sure. Are we going to get the defection podcast? I don't think so. Honestly, I don't know if I'd want to be part of that, given what that would all entail. All right. So
especially after what Alex Galchenyuk said to the cops out in Arizona.
What a mess that is. Dude.
Holy hell. Right. I mean,
I'm a Russian mafia. Nobody talk to me like that, or you never see anything ever again. I couldn't
believe that he did that. That guy was insane. He threatened to cut off the cop's bloodline and have holy shit, it was unbelievable.
You know what, though, Anthony? He needs help, though. I see stuff like that.
Yeah, but
the guy, how many teams has been on now? The guy needs to get help.
But you hear that kind of stuff, Bundy, and then you say, here's the three of us three jamokes sitting here of course we'd like to get Michkov, but we're not going to do something that's going to, impact his defection to the United States. We're not doing that. Hello. Yeah, we have crazy families and people we care about too.
But listen, down the line, if we want to get those guys, I think we can. I think we've always demonstrated over the last 5 years of doing this show that if there's somebody we want to get, we can get them on the show. It's going to be fine. But anyway, the reason that we went with the Flyers, it was the On the Fly Productions team. So it's the Flyers in-house video and audio staff. A big part of this was, I said, if we're going to get Hilferty, we want to do it justice. He's a big get for us. Let's just have the Flyers in-house team. If they're willing to do it. Now, I asked for a list of names and everything, but I was told that we just want to credit them as the On the Fly Productions team. We've actually sung their praises quite a bit recently. The stuff that they've been doing on social media has been really good. The behind the scenes stuff, the video series they're doing on YouTube. I would like to think that at this point, people know that I'm not a bullshitter. I don't fluff. If I don't think that it's, an honest critique, I'm usually overly critical of things in the media and everything. I think they're doing a really nice job. So these people came out, they mic'd us up. They did the lighting. They did the editing of the show. Nothing was cut. So there's no gotcha question. There's no response from Dan Hilferty that the team went back after the fact and said, "Oh, we shouldn't have said that." I will tell you, there's one thing that was noted at some point in this interview. Dan Hilferty says that they've spent $500 million so far redoing Wells Fargo Center. It's $400 million. So that's the one little factoid that I got after the team watched it back. So aside from that, nothing was cut. There's nothing on the cutting room floor that we feel like, like jeopardize the integrity of it. It's a flat run. It went 47 minutes. I think they had agreed to 25 or 30. Of course, as we do this, we just happen to, I guess, be agreeable, and people like to continue talking to us. So this was a long one. But I think that's it. I think we probably addressed everything there is to address.
Yeah, and the last thing I just want to say is I want to give Bundy an opportunity here, just to kind of, we don't want to give anything away. We're gonna hit go here in just a second. But Bundy, just real quick, just an overall 1,000-foot view of the Hilferty interview.
Just dynamic guy. He's a smart guy, Philly guy, gets all the parts of what Philly is, understanding the roots, things we've talked about and complained about. I guess what's interesting, and I don't want to lay it out, but I can't tell you enough how impressed I was just with the stuff we heard. This is a very, very professionally done. There's a lot of great questions, deep questions that you asked Anthony too. It's not just both Flyers hockey product. There's a lot of things that are multifaceted in this interview. And I think that's what's really intriguing. He was so open to share, a conversationalist, but for what Flyers fans, I think, have been longing for, a return to what once, maybe the backtrack of what was. I think you're going to see that shine through in this interview on Dan's part. He's a serious, serious player. He's been around the block many times. And I think people should be pretty, from what I got out of it, it's early. I'm really, really thrilled that he's at the helm of this. And I have nothing but hope for the future of this team with him at the helm of it.
The only thing I could say is this. And look, we don't know if this group is going to be successful. We have no idea. Yeah. Right? We don't know. They might end up being an epic failure, and then we'll say it at the time that they're an epic failure. But the reality of it is that when you talk to Dan Hilferty, you get that sense of you understand why all the people around him are confident that this won't be that. They are confident that they're doing it the right way because you listen to him talk and the way he talks. And he's not a snake oil salesman.
No.
There are guys who are in his position who you listen to them and you're like, oh yeah, they're just selling us a bunch of shit, right? I mean, this guy's not doing that. And you sit there and go, I now understand why the employees feel the way they do.
Yeah.
And the other thing for me, and I won't give anything away. He's a Philly sports guy. Like he's the guy that's climbed the ladder in big companies and big corporate America with IBX, Independence Blue Cross. But he's a sports guy that knows how to run businesses. And I think at the same time, that's the part that's just amazing is that we got a guy that's very much part of the fabric of Philly, loves the dynamic of the sports, understands the fans in this town. And I think that's something right now that this team organization needed more than anything from where it was. And, change is underway. Like Anthony said, the product on the ice will dictate and determine the future for everybody involved. And that's because it's results on the ice. This is all fluff. It's powder. It's beautiful. It's great stuff. There's a change. There's a foreshadow to the future. I believe it's going to work because I believe the right people there. And I believe the right people, when they do their job right and are allowed to do their job, will get people, get this organization where it needs to be. But the heart of the team is back in a sense that we say, like, that's the part that I missed. And that's back. There's a feeling of, wow, I'm home again, just even walking into a place like Adrian with you guys. And that in and of itself speaks to me incredible volumes. Remember, guys, we were public enemy number one. I don't care what anybody says with that organization. And to have, I think, just been truthful and honest and fair through this process, it shows a little bit of cream rising to the top a little bit, and have your integrity, do things the right way, speak the right way about things. When it's true, be honest. When it's not, tell that story too. But the fact that we were back in there, in that restaurant in Wells Fargo Center, I think is an interesting journey for myself, certainly, and for Snow the goalie. And we're gonna keep rolling. It's really cool when I look at something like that happen and transpire and say, wow, what a ride I've been on for 2 or 3 years, and what a ride that we're going to continue on. So great interview, Anthony. Both you guys did a good job, and I know the fans are going to really enjoy it. So I'm sure we'll leave it to them now and enjoy the interview, and we'll see you guys at the end of the week. Thank you.
And by the way, really quick, the one thing that I want to address with listeners just in general, and I think it's only a very small subset at this point. There are people who I think are so used to being bitter about everything that has to do with the team that the second that you're positive about something, they jump and they say that you're a shill. And if you're new to this show, like 2 episodes ago or 3 episodes ago, and you're like, wow, these guys are a little bit too positive about the team, I would encourage you to go back and listen to like the last 3 years of podcasts, right? Where we've called everyone onto the carpet. We used to call Hextall onto the carpet. Certainly Chuck Fletcher. We talked Dave Scott. We were naming Val Camillo and Mike Shane, who also, by the way, is no longer with the organization. We were calling those people out on Press Row Show and on Snow the Goalie years ago. We've been as critical as anybody. But in fairness, like when there's a new regime that takes over, you have to at least try to give them the benefit of the doubt until they prove that they can't handle it. And if at some point, like if we find out that Dan Hilferty's meddling like a Jerry Jones, which by the way, we brought up on the interview that you're about to hear, if that day ever comes, we're going to call out Dan Hilferty. If we ever feel like Keith Jones and Danny Briere are letting down what the Flyers are supposed to be, we're going to call it out. You know, Anthony's like Mr. Beat guy, insider guy. I'm the guy who kind of like, lobs the grenades from a distance, right? I mean, I used to go down there and cover games. I might go down and do some games this year. But like, I think we've always been as critical as we can be, but we're not going to make up being critical just for clicks.
Right.
Nor are we going to like compromise the whatever integrity we have as a show by, fluffing up something for like better access. We don't need it. They asked us for this time. We gave them the time, but we definitely asked Hilferty some questions in this that like, I'm going to tell you right now, there's stuff that's going to come up about Wells Fargo Center and the Sixers that like he did not mince words. And this team and the PR team, they didn't come back to us after the fact and say, can you please cut that from the interview? So there's going to be some stuff in here that like I said this last week, if the Inquirer is doing their job, if like some of these other outlets are doing their job and they come across this interview, which we'll probably send to them just so they have it and we can say, hey, you should have covered this. He didn't mince words, and there's a lot of stuff in here that is noteworthy. So I think it's time to probably.
But it's okay to be positive too, right?
Yeah.
Like what I'm saying, Russ. It's fine to be positive, and it's okay. And I know seeing fans like saying like this isn't our brand. Our brand is being honest and truthful, and to share that moment in time with you, the fans, and that's the important part for me. And so. Yeah, when it was bad, we'll say it's bad. And if the team struggles again this year, we're talking about the ice. We're going to talk about what the product on the ice is like.
Yep.
But this is
we're not going to fluff that either.
Systemic change that's going on. And from where I am as an alumni that played a long time in this town, I'm excited about it. It's something different than what we've seen, guys. We've seen a lot of things happen in 5 years, 4 years. Yep. And this is a return to norm. So let's live in that moment. If it doesn't go the way it is, we'll still be here every week to talk about it.
That's right.
All right. It's time to go.
Without further ado, Russ.
Without upsetting the person who gets upset about super chats, D-Mako1 sent us one over here. Thanks, guys. By the way, Bundy, you rule on NHL 96. A little salute. So thanks for that. By the way, all the orders, except for like the last 4 or 5, whatever, if you ordered a shirt or mug or hoodie or whatever in the last couple of days, yours has not shipped yet, but just about everybody else's orders have either been delivered or been shipped. If you have questions, email snowthegoalie@gmail.com or DM me on Twitter and I'll handle that. So, all right, guys, I think we've done enough fluff leading up to this. Let's get into the interview. We'll be back later this week with a brand new episode where we'll dissect this and we'll talk about any news and notes. Tony D'Angelo, perhaps. There's plenty more. We'll be talking about it later this week. So for Bundy, for Ant, I'm Russ. We'll talk to you. The Goalie, the Only Flyers podcast. And we are not sitting at home. We are not sitting in front of a bunch of computers. We're not trying to figure out how to stream this thing. We're here with an actual production crew at the Adrian Restaurant in Wells Fargo Center, which means that arguably the biggest period in Snow the Goalie history is underway. And it's not because of me, and it's not because of Ant, and it's not because of Bundy, but it's who we're here with. Typically, we say the Presidential Podcast, the Pedialyte Podcast, the Pampers Podcast, the Prognosticators Podcast, but never before have we had the CEO of Comcast Spectacor and the governor of the Philadelphia Flyers. Dan Hilferty is here. Thanks for coming on to Snow the Goalie.
Russ, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
That was a one-handed round of applause is what that was.
Jump you. You didn't even try to applaud.
No, I didn't. No. I'm unimpressed. That's all. I'm unimpressed.
Sorry, Russ.
No.
Thanks for coming on, Dan. Great to have you here.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, really good. And I know, as Russ said, I look at it like different outlets, like having an opportunity to really come in and get your story, how this started. First of all, becoming the CEO of the Flyers, the governor of this great organization. First, we were going to say, how did this whole thing spiral for you? How did you end up in this position?
Well, first of all, I have to say to you, Chris, or Bundy, you go by Bundy here, Anthony and Russ, I'm thrilled to be here. For me, it was exciting to meet you guys. I have followed what you do over the years, and certainly your career, Bundy.
Thank you, sir.
The night of the announcements for Danny Briere and Keith Jones, just getting a chance to meet you and see how comfortable you guys are with each other. And I felt honored to watch as you guys beat each other up. But to answer your question, I'm a Philadelphia guy. I think I've said longtime Flyers fan.
Yeah.
I can't say I'm an expert and never will say I'm an expert about hockey, but I've been a fan of all the Philadelphia teams, and I bleed this region, Delaware County and South Jersey. Actually grew up in Ocean City, New Jersey, originally from here. But I have to say that I've always been a fan. So when this opportunity came along, I felt as though I can run a business. I've proven that. And this is a business at the end of the day. But when it came along, the excitement to be part of a conversation like this, to be part of a group of people who are pulling to do something great for this city and this region, I couldn't pass it up. It came out of the blue. I had retired as CEO of Independence Blue Cross about 2.5 years ago now, and had an opportunity to interview a longtime friend, Brian Roberts, at a health conference that I had put together with Brian Tierney and a couple of other folks. And it went so well, he said, hey, let's get together for breakfast. And I thought, great, I'd like to help them figure out their digital health. I think Comcast should own the digital health space with all the different distribution network channels that they have. So we just started talking about sports, and this came up, and one thing led to another, and that was November of 2020, what are we in now, 2022. And then around holiday season, we agreed that I would do this.
So you had no expectation in that November meeting that this was going to come up?
No, that came up. It came up in that meeting.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, you weren't expecting it going into that meeting.
No, going into it, no.
Right.
I remember saying to my wife, Joan, this is great. You know, Brian, amazing guy. And I say this all the time. I have great admiration for him and respect and consider him a friend. And I was looking forward to the breakfast, you know, and had some ideas of how I could maybe be helpful. Wasn't looking for work per se. And you could have knocked me over with a feather when this came up, and it took a while for me to really take it in and think, A, I can do it, B, I can do it really well, and C, I'm going to be truthful about what I know, which I've always tried to be, about what I know, what I don't know, and get people around me that fill those gaps. And I think that's any team, right?
Absolutely. Right.
Well,
any team that you guys are involved.
In fairness, that's not exactly something that every owner of a team or the top executive of a team is willing to admit publicly. And it's not just here; it's in other markets as well. But we typically get inundated, or we have over the past few years, about fans who are unhappy or fans who are happy. But one of the things that's definitely stuck out since you've taken over, that we've gotten all kinds of messages and emails about, is people running into you at places and being approachable, and the excitement of being in this position, and people kind of, I think, feeling a renewed sense of optimism with this team. Now, you mentioned that you might not be the most knowledgeable hockey guy, but you're going to surround yourself with really good people. One of the things that people always want to know about an owner is, all right, what kind of owner do you intend to be? Like, who do you look at and say, yeah, I think, like, do you want to be the guy who jumps into every move like a Jerry Jones? Do you want to be somebody who maybe is a little bit more hands-off? Like, where do you kind of envision yourself being over, like, let's say the next year or two, as you kind of get acclimated to being in that role?
Russ, I think that is a really key question. So let me clarify something here. I have great respect for the individuals, the families who, through their business know-how or entrepreneurial spirit, made the type of money that you can go out and buy a sports franchise. I mean, who wouldn't dream of that? Sure. I'm not that guy. So I say, yes, I'm the governor of the Philadelphia Flyers. I'm chairman and CEO of Comcast Spectacor, But I am not the owner of the Flyers. I represent ownership. And I want to be very clear about that, because I think we're most successful in life when we're authentic, when people see who we are and who we're not. And what it's done for me is create a level of trust when I walk into a room with John Tortorella, Danny Briere, someone like you, Bundy, and Keith, and the conversation turns to hockey. They don't look for me for input. What I can give them is what the three of us can, and you have learned to give, the perspective of the fan. Sure. Put the business piece aside. I can run businesses inside. That's the one thing I'll brag about. There are few that are as good as I am at running a business. Yeah. I'll just say that. But I will say that the fan's perspective. So I've been part of those discussions. Never want to be Jerry Jones. Never will try to be Jerry Jones. Will never try to persuade that triumvirate from making a decision around hockey. What I will do when asked is give a fan's perspective, and certainly give a perspective for the ownership that I represent in my role as chair and CEO.
The one thing,
sense?
Yeah, it absolutely does.
And I'm going to follow up exactly what you had. And when you got announced, I remember coming on, and not a lot of people. I mean, we knew you from the help.
Wait. By the way, you guys at the carnival. I'm walking
Yes.
by. You guys are doing your show, and I'm thinking, I hope these guys don't see me. I don't know. I don't have a clue.
Would have called you
They're
right
gonna ask
over,
me
Dan.
a
You
question.
missed it.
I literally walked. Well, not that you know who I was, but I literally went.
No,
like,
I would have known who.
Sorry, Bundy. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Am I going to have to pull a Bundy bomb now? Bundy bomb ain't coming yet.
Just for perspective for the people who weren't around
That's a true statement, by the way.
for who were watching or listening to the show. We were out on the main concourse. You were walking the main concourse.
Yes.
You weren't sitting up in a suite somewhere. You weren't detached and just kind of overseeing the whole thing. You were there amongst the people, which again isn't necessarily par for the course for
It's just
CEO,
it's just who
governor.
it's who I am. About that. I want to get back to your point.
Yeah.
But I was on my way to meet somebody in Cape May. I'm at the shore, and there's a red light at 34th Street in Ocean City where I go out to go over the bridge. It's a long, not at 34th, at 24th Street. It's a long light. Guy in front of me is in a truck, and they had just given me a stash of, every time I go to Voorhees, I get a stash of new shirts, sweatshirts, whatever it might be, and I love it. Guy had a little flyer sticker, one of those license plates.
Yeah.
And so I knew I had time. I got out of the car, I ran up, I knocked on his window. He's like, whoa, like, what do you want? I'm like, no, I held up a shirt. He rolls down his window. I said, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. Just want to know, I like your license plate. Stick with us. Here's a shirt. He said, who are you? I work for the Flyers, and I ran back.
Didn't even tell him who you were.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
great.
I saw the Flyers charity thing. I see it like on Route 73 the other day in Jersey, and I was behind it. I'm like, I'm going to swing up there, just kind of a little wink, a little thank you kind of. But I get that.
Yeah.
That's Philly. Like, and that's the stuff that we've talked about of what the meaning is. I find the Flyers, Dan, and maybe you go back in your time, but this is something I've talked about extensively for 3 years, couple of years certainly. You bring what I think an understanding of this community, of this city, of its sports fans, of the parades it's had, of its wins, its losses, and all the other things. And you don't have to be the most knowledgeable hockey guy or baseball guy, because you can be a sports guy and somebody that can delegate. You want to put people in right positions to flourish. I feel a lot of fans, and this is the part where I kind of came in, and I said there's been a disconnect to the fan base. How important is that to you now? Because there's a full 180 that's happened, and it's happened very quickly.
Don't say 360.
No 180. But it's happened.
I do the math on everything on this show. That's all good.
It's happened really fast. And when you got hired, I remember coming out and saying, from mutual friends that we have and I've known you through connections. We probably shook hands a couple times. I said, Dan Hilferty is the real deal. And I said, and I wanted people to understand that this is what this team needed in this moment in time. And I think with Jonesy coming in, he'd been here a long time. Broadcaster, yes, but knowledgeable of the league, knowledgeable of what the franchise is. What is a balancing act for you to move into the future with some of the progressiveness that goes on, but also honoring the traditions and the history of the franchise that quite frankly, Ed Snyder built, put in place, and win or lose, and I know we go back to 75, we're going to change that, the winning formula, but what does that balancing act look like to you?
Chris, you just hit upon it. And it's something I've said, and it's something we talked about. You are going to write the book, by the way.
I
You guys are
hope
gonna
so.
write the book. But this is all about what we have is here. And I told this story 100 times. I'm just a fan, and I'm just a guy. I swear, that's how I see myself in this whole thing. I have certain skills. We all have certain skills. But if we look at the great tradition of the Flyers, and I talk about leaving St. Joe's with a group of buddies. What nobody ever asks the question, what were you doing at St. Joe's that late in the season? Summer school. I had to go. We get in the car and we go down and watch the parade on come up Broad Street, go back to St. Joe's. Point being, for this franchise to truly live out its potential, we can't do it without understanding our history. And I said this a couple of times. There on the National Archives building in D.C. is engraved Shakespeare line, but the past is prologue.
Yeah.
And it's from the time I was 20-some years old that it's just, I've always tried to use that in everything I've done, more professionally than personally. So we had to first honor, at a time when people wanted to rip down the foundational titans of our organization. And we named them, and it's all you guys that played and really brought us so much pride and excitement. And then we have to honor, on a business side, an individual who had the gumption. So should I use the word gumption? We are on the air. The gumption, the foresight, and kind of the innovative spirit that I like to talk about to create the Flyers in Ed Snyder. Yeah. And that, we're not competing with that. No, we're paying homage to that. Mm-hmm. And we're paying homage to success. But in order to be successful in the future, we take the learnings from that. And I'm going to come back to the fans. Yeah. That's key. Take the learnings from that and use that formula to apply new players, new thinking, because the world changes, right? Yep. And that's what's behind Keith Jones, Danny Briere, and I always kid Torts that we're the old guys in the room. We are. I hate to say it, but we are. And I hope for him, like for me, this is our last hurrah. Yeah. And I'm not saying I can't measure that in years at this point. So hey, let's let this new level of thinking bring us along in creating that next memorable era for the Flyers. Yeah. Well, where does it start and stop? It starts and stop with the fans. Yeah. People, I ran big companies for a lot of years. People wouldn't stop me on the street. They stop me on the street now. Yeah. You know why? Because they care. Yeah. Because it matters to them. I get texts from people I haven't heard from in years because they want something special to believe in and be part of.
It's unique, Dan.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been all over the country, right? I mean, there's nothing like sports in Philadelphia as far as what it means to the people of this city. This is a pilgrimage from leaving your home to come down to the building or to go to the ballpark or go to the Lincoln Financial Field. It's like a Sunday pilgrimage, right? Like they're going to go down and it's their religion and they're going to worship in this altar, right? For their favorite team. That's how important sports is to these people, and we have to treat them like that. Otherwise, you don't have the success that you need to have, correct?
Absolutely. And have you ever walked in a room with Keith Jones?
Oh, yeah.
We just the other day at the end of the prospects camp, the scrimmage, we were told there were several hundred people down in the foyer waiting to get in, and they're hoping to get autographs signed by the prospects.
I saw this. Yeah.
So he and I were talking, and Cindy stopped and said, you guys ought to go down there. And he didn't. It wasn't. Now, Danny was tied up doing what Danny needs to do, but it wasn't even a hesitation. He looked at me, he goes, let's go. And we went down there. Now, sure, people wanted to say hi to me, and I told them who I was. Most of them had no clue, but that's okay. There was somebody from the Flyer organization that was there that respected that they cared.
Yeah.
He stood down there. He didn't miss a person. Photographs, autographs. Oh, I knew your cousin. I mean, it was uncanny. I wish we probably do have it on tape. We'll have to find that out. But my point is that's got to be the spirit that the persona that we each take on in our own authentic ways to connect with people. And My wife says to me all the time, "Man, you're so extroverted." I don't think I am. I don't think I am. But the point is, if it's about making people believe and get excited again, Anthony, as you said, let's go do it.
Yeah.
And all of this that we're kind of talking on and hitting on is this idea of, I think, like a warmth. And back at the press conference, I'd asked you about, when you're hiring a president of hockey ops, how big of a deal was it to have like the right affect, right? To have the right kind of makeup, the right kind of the outgoing nature, the feeling of warmth and humanity, right? So on the fan front, you guys are hitting that. The one thing that I think people had kind of asked a lot of questions about, and it has to do with the draft, was meeting with the eventual draft pick, Matvei Michkov. Now, there's obviously a language barrier there.
Yes.
But one has to think nonverbal cues and body language and all that kind of plays in. I don't know if you were at those meetings, but if people and
I've been late for one meeting in my time. This is the truth. I've been late for one meeting in my time here. It was that meeting. But can I just, Russ, just to pick up on your point, like what I said that night was that it takes a combination of collaborative pieces with different strengths and weaknesses. We all have both, right?
Of course.
And you put that together. So although I don't know hockey, I knew that we all know we have a coach that has, he is who he is. And that's what's, you're not going to find anybody as passionate as Coach Tortorella.
Right.
But the experience, the pedigree, Stanley Cup championship, and then you've got a guy. I didn't know Danny Briere. I knew of Danny Briere. Might have met him along the way somewhere, like we talked about, Chris. But you watch him. He combines, like he works so hard at it. He's smart as can be. He's got a quiet charisma about him. He combines analytics with the eye test that Torts talks about. And then you throw Jonesy into that. The three of them together with the rest of us kind of orbiting around, that's the combination I was looking for. And that's why I overused the term collaboration.
Yeah, I was, and I went in and spoke when I spoke with him last week, I went and addressed the young guys about some of my experiences. And Danny and Jonesy had called me to make sure I did that. But you get the feeling, too, like Danny's really got a good handle on these young guys, are attentive to him. He's delegating it, and it just feels right.
And not
that's
perfect.
Yeah,
none of us
not
are
perfect.
And I mean, yesterday's prime example. Really good people, and with the social media mix up. Good people. We all make mistakes, so we learn from it, we grow from it, we move on, and that's how we're going to be. There's going to be times where you guys will be, what is going on over there? But we're trying to figure it out too. But to your question about the first round pick, Michkov. So I didn't get to meet him there because I got my times confused in Nashville and I wasn't available for the meeting here. But those guys, that war room, I was so impressed by the scouts, Danny and Keith. I walked in just to observe, and John LeClaire was sitting down at the end of the room, so I went down to sit by John, and as I'm walking by, Keith didn't even look up. He was so focused on the data that he had in front of him, listening to Danny, listening to the scouts. So my point is, people miss the fact that this is their profession.
Yeah.
And these guys, they go at it hard. So long way of answering it. I felt very comfortable that if that's the direction they decided to go in, that they knew the personality was the type of personality we're looking for. So then I got to meet him draft night. I'm up there on the stage, and really, it was a thrill. I have no other way of putting it. And to see the excitement in this kid's eyes told me everything I needed to know.
He wanted to be here.
He wanted to be here. And through the translator, I got to meet him up in the suites afterwards, and he kept saying, "This is where I want to be." Now, he's a fire person. Like, do we want a competitive person that maybe once in a while will give a teammate a little look like, "Yo, this is how we play"? We want that.
Yeah.
We want that. So, but the person, they were convinced, and because they were convinced, I'm convinced that we got somebody that has Philly from afar. Man.
Yeah.
And Russia's about as far as you can go. Right?
We've come a long way from that Russian game against the Flyers in the late 70s.
Right? Exactly.
In fairness,
Yeah.
when you first took over, and I want to be as respectful as I can be to the collection of players that have been assembled over time and are here and will be here, but one of the things that this team was definitely missing was a young player that you could look at and say, this guy has superstar potential, that this is a guy that you could potentially build as the centerpiece of a team. You're up there, you're at the draft, you're watching him fall, and by many accounts, he was arguably the second best player. Any other year could have been the number 1 overall pick. Do you just kind of sit and like take a moment and think, wow, I can't believe this guy fell to us. He wants to be here. Yeah. And he really could jumpstart what we're trying to do here over the next few years.
Yeah. I wish I could tell you I was that sophisticated about it. Russ. Like I'm being yeah. Here's what I had a sense of. I had a sense of in terms of forwards, in terms of defense, in terms of goalies, who the folks are that they're putting that Rubik's Cube together of who might fall to us, right? And Keith and Danny both said to me at one point, this guy is a talent, not we're taking him. Yeah. This guy is a talent. Like, and we all know the geopolitical and other reasons that he might slip. So I thought it might be possible, but it's not like I was sitting there. I could tell they were all calculating across the end of the table. That was a treat too. 66 years old, I was like a kid. but they were watching that and thinking that. I was just enjoying the moment. I wish I could tell you that. And then I had a job to do,
What was that?
So Ian, who runs analytics, and they were all involved in making selection, but his job when time came was to bring the sweater up, the jersey up, and paste the name of the guy. Was my job. I was a hoops player. My job was to set a pick so that nobody at another table could see. It's true. That was my job at the draft.
Yeah. How funny is that?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So my point. I was enjoying the moment, but then when it dropped to us, I knew it was going to happen, and it was exciting.
So just on the whole, before we start diving into some other things, what was the experience like for you? I mean, I'm going to ask about 2 different places you went. You went to your first governor's meeting, right, up in New York, and then the whole experience of the entire time in Nashville. Yeah. I'm just kind of like, for the first time, like you said, you were 66 years old, feeling like a kid again.
Right.
Obviously, the first one's more business. The second one, you can probably be a little bit more of a fan. But what were those 2 experiences like?
Well, it's interesting, Anthony. I had the good fortune for a number of years to run the 4th largest Blue Cross Blue Shield plan in the country, Independence Health Group, Independence Blue Cross. They were part of a network of 39 across the country, different blue branded companies. The board meetings were eerily similar. You have all these high powered and it was healthcare people. I became chairman of that group later in my tenure there. I had somewhat the same feeling without the sports aura around it. And I watched that guy play on TV. And Gary Bettman has really embraced me as he does all governors. And so Gary went up and had lunch with him. Have had several conversations with him. Have asked his advice along the way. So I felt welcomed. I felt really honored to represent the tradition of the Flyers. When you think of it, there were the original teams, and then there's who?
Right.
Yeah.
The Flyers. And so here I am sitting there representing the Flyer tradition, representing Brian Roberts and Comcast, who, you know how I feel about them. But at the same time, I don't shy away from, we talked about sharpened elbows in basketball, sharpening our elbows to position us in a way that we need to be positioned. So the first meeting spent a lot of time introducing and being introduced to people, folks coming up and saying hello. I have to tell you, Dave Poyle he came right up because he and Jonesy are so tight, and he was so welcoming to me. So that I felt by the time I got to Nashville, when he said his farewells, I felt like I knew him. I felt like he was a friend. So I wasn't in awe, but I was just honored to be there representing our great brand.
Yeah, you see all the tables. It's pretty cool, right? Like at an event.
Well, now it's a giant. Oh, you're talking about
the draft, yeah. So
but the board meeting's a big.
Yes.
A big. rectangular table, and there's the governor and then there's alternate governors. So John Master, our counsel, was there. He's an alternate governor. Jonesy was there. Jonesy was great. Like he's sitting next to me,
and that's new for him too.
New for him, but he knew everybody in the room. And then Nashville was. And what was cool about Nashville, I think my wife Joan was excited as I was, and we took in the awards night, which was as close to athletics. It was like ESPYs devoted to ice hockey, in the NHL, and just the character of the players who gave speeches when they won. And I'd like to thank my parents. I'd like to thank my partner or my wife. I'd like to thank my ownership. It really made me again proud and honored, but it also made me feel like I'm home. I'm in a really comfortable place, and even at this age, an opportunity to learn more and do more, and hopefully have a positive impact.
You mentioned basketball. I think this is a good time to transition a little bit. Obviously, we're a hockey podcast, but I do think that hockey fans have a real vested interest in what's going on with the relationship with the 76ers and the building here at Wells Fargo Center. And I want to get into a lot of the changes that you guys are making as well. But I think maybe from a 1,000-foot view, maybe to start off with, could you kind of maybe update us on where things are right now between you guys and the Sixers? I know they're still pushing their plan to go down into the city. You guys are trying to keep them here. Can you update us where things are?
Okay, so look, I have to start by saying I've told you I'm a Flyers fan. I'm a huge Sixers fan. I mean, who can't be? I mean,
sure,
I can remember watching Channel 17 and Hal Greer and Wally Jones and doing their. I'm always a backcourt guy, like defenseman or
basketball guy here too. The others play. They like the Sixers.
Yeah. So, and I'll always be a Sixers fan. So I start with that on the Philly native basis. Coming into this role, and really felt it was important that. Number one, hey, look, we're all going concerns. We're businesses. The Sixers currently have a view of what they'd like to do with their franchise and what the home should be like. I respect that, and part of me really understands it. I wanted them to be very clear that between now and 2031, that we were going to do everything in our power. We weren't going to obstruct anything. To the contrary, we were going to do everything in our power to help them win championships. And I think anybody from David Edelman to anybody, Tad Brown, anybody you talk to, we've done that. We've in every way, shape, or form, and that will continue to the day either they stick with us and we build something together at the right time, or they depart. That's what's going to happen. So that's we've tried to have that, and I know David Edelman did a podcast. David and I have kept up a somewhat active dialogue. He is an owner, and I respect that. But at the same time, I am charged to lead this organization. We have a different view of what's best, not only for the Wells Fargo Center, but we believe for the region as a whole. But others are going to determine whether it's viable for the Sixers to go there, and if in fact they ultimately will go to the Market East area, or we'll be able to entice them to partner with us in a very significant way and create our future together, hopefully along with the Phillies and the Eagles, and do something special right down here on this amazing footprint. That's amazing. That is part of the tradition of Philadelphia sports.
Yeah, and I want to kind of dive into those other teams as well, because I'm sure you have great relationships already with the Phillies and with the Eagles, and when you talk about what could potentially happen down in South Philadelphia. Do you get a sense, maybe already, and you can only say so much, but do you get a sense that they're already on board with kind of an idea of what should be next for this area down here, and that it's just a matter of, are we going to do it just the three of us, or let's wait for the Sixers and then make it a 4-team deal? Is that kind of where they are as well?
I tend to look at it a little different.
Okay.
Anthony, so differently. I look at it this way. One, the relationship, yes. But if it's not me, certainly Brian Roberts has relationships with Jeffrey Lurie. I have a relationship with John Middleton. He has a relationship with John Middleton. Jeffrey and I have, in my role in the business community, Independence Blue Cross was one of the sponsors. So I had that Eagles relationship. really got to know them well through our efforts to bring the World Cup to Philadelphia in 2026.
Yeah.
The Eagles team, and that's where the matches will be played, from Jeffrey to Don to Frank Gemini to everybody involved, including Tony Leonard, the best turf guy in the world. The Eagles just opened their arms to that. So I come into this role, already had that relationship, already had the Phillies' relationship with Dave Buck and everybody around that, and John Middleton had somewhat of a relationship. Sixers, we talked about that. But here's how I look at the answer to your question. One, we're starting with something that's very basic. You notice that what we're doing with the entrances and the exits, well, that's the start. Each of the teams, the Sixers, the Phillies, the Eagles. Now, the Eagles, they might say, well, you've got how many home games a year? But they're leaning in with us. We're going to work with the city. We're going to come up with a plan to make it much more efficient getting in and out of the stadium district.
That's great.
So that's what do they say? Table stakes. It's a basic one. In terms of going to the next level, if you look at the trend in stadium regions or complexes around the country, places like Atlanta, St. Louis, Arlington, Texas, Kansas City, what they've done around their stadiums is amazing. Multi-use, mainly high-end apartments, not a lot of condos. And think about it: if you're a business person or just an avid Flyers fan, Phillies fan, Sixers fan, whatever it might be, you lease one of these high-end apartments. Think of what you can do at a Phillies homestand in terms of entertainment. And so high-end apartments, and then young people thinking, no, we want to be around that. Yeah. Restaurants, other types of entertainment. Heck, Comcast owns an organization called NBC Universal. Why couldn't we think about doing something really cool with a Universal sponsored, I don't know, it'd be a theme park, but an educational piece, sports education piece. Someone just said to me a week or two ago, this should be the location of the sports museum for Philadelphia in the region.
Yeah,
Philadelphia Sports Museum. Sure. Think about it. Yeah. So you mix all that stuff, entertainment, other things, this all of a sudden becomes a hub.
Yeah, almost like a little village, almost like
a village,
like a village.
So wait, we got a ways to go.
Yeah,
you've got to get PIDC on board, the Sports Authority aboard, the neighborhood first and foremost.
Sure,
I think that's one thing the Sixers have learned about in their discussions with the Chinatown community, that if you're not aligned with the community, you're lost.
Yeah.
So, but I can tell you this: the Phillies, the Flyers, Comcast Spectacor, we're very excited about. The Eagles are cooperative to the extent it's important to them, and I get that. I mean, they're one of the premier. Phillies are a premier baseball franchise too. So the thing around the Sixers is Sixers will always be welcome. If the Sixers ultimately decide to stay put and we do something, which is my dream and my hope, I don't know if it'll be successful. It will include a vision of a broader sports, multi-use entertainment region.
This might be a slightly off-topic question, but kind of related, and maybe I'm just missing the boat, or maybe I'm onto something here. When the agreement was made to bring the World Cup here, was this part of the pitch of what could potentially be part of that, like some stuff here in 2026, or not? No, not at all.
Not at all.
Okay.
No. But
you know where I'm thinking.
I know exactly what you're thinking. But now,
because of the space, right? You got all these people coming in.
But think about it, and we've been in discussions with FIFA. We think of the Super Bowl as like the World Cup is 100 and some Super Bowls, or however many matches are going to be played over that month. FIFA is a pretty strong organization, so they have thoughts and I was going to call them guidelines, but these aren't guidelines. These are like, this is how it gets done because they've been so successful. Well, now that I'm in this role, never thought of what you just said, Anthony, but now that I'm in this role, we're here at Comcast Spectacor thinking, this is so exciting. What can we do to maximize the potential of this area, not only to highlight Philadelphia? Already, FDR Park is going to play a big role in it. There's a vision of creating a soccer training facility that would be one of the training facilities, hopefully for the teams, and then maximizing, as you said, maximizing the potential of this area.
It's an absolute slam dunk. I don't know if any of you guys have ever been in Europe when a World Cup's been going on. I was fortunate. I was in Berlin studying in 2010. And so in Berlin, they have that giant fan mile that goes like through the Brandenburg Gate and everything.
Yeah.
It's huge. And you look out here and it's an absolute no-brainer to have something, whether or not it's able,
Well, Russ, interesting enough, that in Berlin, because we've studied it, they were able to, the Fan Fest went along that whole thing. Yeah. Our Fan Fest will be more geared towards center cities, so people can walk out of office buildings and participate. And the coolest thing there was, didn't they have barges where they put these big screens?
Yeah, it's right. It's like right past the gate. It's every, I don't know how many hundreds of yards, but yeah, giant screens. But every town, every town handles it differently. Like Hamburg, not Pennsylvania, right? German Hamburg. They have like a few giant parks where it would be kind of like a space like that, huge screen. They set up, the stands based on each of the countries' food. It's a totally different thing. It would seem like a very smart thing, and obviously you were part of bringing
we'll see,
the World Cup here. But
I never thought of what the opportunities could be here, other than FIFA's vision, which is an appropriate vision, until I took, what they say, where you stand depends on where you sit.
Right.
Now I sit here, and we're looking for opportunities.
Could this be used as like a venue to do something akin to a watch party? Okay.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't want to get ahead of myself. I don't want to get ahead of myself.
I saw Ireland play
wait.
Italy in '94, right? Now, the Meadowlands.
How about that? Just think how amazing, and that was back then.
Yeah.
But just think, 4th of July.
Yeah.
Quarterfinal, U.S. Great Britain.
Oh.
I mean, insanity.
Next door. That would be insane.
That would be insane.
That would be insane. One of the things that we've heard, I don't want to say complaints, but more so like why the Sixers want to do their own thing, is a lot of bit about the changes that would need to happen here. They used a simple term as aesthetic changes, but obviously you guys have sunk a lot of money into this building. Can you just talk about the latest stuff that I think is really going to benefit them? Because I know the NBA kind of came in and toured around, so yeah, this could be better, and I think you guys are trying to address that.
Yeah, so I think that's at the heart of it, but not totally at the heart of the issue. I would say this: you start at the numbers. We've put about $500 million into. We don't call it aesthetic. I mean, this is a new Wells Fargo building.
Yeah,
right.
And part of that was to focus on the fan experience. So here we are sitting in this incredible restaurant, Adrian, that is, the food's really good. And so
it's Steven Starr.
Steven Starr, you come, you have a great dining experience, and then watch a Sixers or Flyers game or whatever it might be. There are other similar high-end fan experiences that we've built into this. Ease of coming in and parking and getting out, so you don't have that nightmare. It will never be perfect. Name me any major sports facility that has perfect entrance and exit. But we've done all that. The seating is great. Sure, there are every time there's a new arena, there's certain new, they call these luge seating or whatever it might be, and that type of thing. But as best we could, we turned this into a brand new arena, and the feedback that we've gotten has been incredible. One of the things I think HBSC talks about as it relates to the Sixers is locker room, training facilities. And what I will say to you is that right now, if we were to take this show on the road, we could walk down, put hard hats on, and see a multi-million dollar investment to turn the locker room areas into state-of-the-art facilities where everything from the amenities that players, coaches, the media expect, they're going to be part of it. And where I think on the podcast, David talked about, you had to a player gets hurt, you got to take him back to Camden. I don't know about that, but I will tell you, come this coming season, that will not be the case. And frankly, we offered to foot half the bill for making the Sixers everything that the Flyers is going to be. They chose to go in a different direction. Now, they've been very collaborative and supportive on other things, but they're going to have access to these first-class facilities. And so we're excited about that. We're a building built in the mid-1990s, right? But I'll tell you, you walk in here, everything from the technology, the scoreboard, it has a brand new feel to it, and fans are telling us that.
I think the last question then for us, and then we can wrap this up because I know you have other commitments today. You mentioned obviously your dream is to have it be a partnership between you guys. Can you maybe talk us through what a 50-50 partnership might look like
Sure.
in this building, and include if you could, because I have some confusion. Over what I heard on our podcast here on Crossing Broad was when I worked here, scheduling was always collaborative between NHL, NBA. Each team got a chance to pick first or whatever the case from year to year, and then concerts and everything else came later. I know the Sixers were then sold after the fact, but I had always been told that it was kind of kept the same way. So can we address that as well as part of the 50-50 partnership and what that might look like?
Let's start with the scheduling. Just as you articulated it, your time here.
Yeah.
It is still how it's done.
Okay.
It is you take one, we take one, and it's scheduled. The leagues agree upon it. It's nobody has an advantage.
Right.
And we try. And 98% of the events that we'd like to have here, we get here. But it's the one thing that does upset me about the rhetoric that's coming from the Sixers is that they're disadvantaged in that way. And they talk about big holiday games. The next, I think it's 24 and 25, if I have my years right, I might be wrong, Christmas Day games right here. So it's
wow.
One year Sixers go first, we go second, and it just goes back and forth. And you're right, the dates that are open, we look for great acts and concerts, whatever it might be that we can bring in. But I want to be very clear about it. If you hear that, it's not true.
Right.
What is true is that we have a fair, back and forth, shared approach to scheduling. Sometimes we win, sometimes they win, just based on whose turn it is.
Right.
It's like a draft pick.
Right.
It's that simple. Now, so in terms of the way we look at the potential, and again, I'm not faulting the Sixers, and these are really smart, dedicated people, and I love how David Edelman is what do they say, for the love of Philly? He's a Philly guy.
Through and through.
He's a Philly guy through and through. So, but what I'll say is, as a fellow Philly guy, the opportunity for us together to do something that neither of us can do alone. We're both going to be successful if they move. We're going to compete for business. We're competitors.
Right.
We will do everything we can to win, as will they. But just imagine if we had a true, and David's right, I always use the term partner. He says, no, we're a tenant. Well, a true partnership would be where we have 50-50 stake in this.
Yeah.
We would envision Comcast, Spectacor continuing to manage, but where you have a board, small board, but both representing both entities, and we decide the future direction together. And we do a relationship with a Live Nation around several acts. We work together, with the Phillies and the Eagles on whatever development we can do in this area. And when you think about it, 85% of our fans drive to games.
Yeah.
75% of, when I say our fans, I'm talking about all the franchises. 75 come from outside the city, including Jersey, Delaware, and points out that way. What better location than this when you have 22,000 opens? Now, we would have to address parking if we develop. There'd have to be some parking garages, that type of thing. But this is the best place to do it. We will continue to try to sell that to the Sixers. We will continue to try to make offers, opportunities for them to think about what we could do together. But it would be in the spirit, as you started, Anthony, of true 50-50 partnership.
We started this whole interview saying Philadelphia is a unique sports town. There's nothing better than a unique sports town having a unique sports area. And I think that just makes a lot of sense to me. I don't know if you agree, Russ.
Well, Dan's been around. You've been to the buildings. I think the one thing that's unique when we do go around is that you might have cities that have one building here and another one 20 miles out. But Philly has been, I don't even know if people realize how great it is here because of the proximity to the bridges and the access to all the other sports things. It's all right here.
Yep, exactly.
And that's what makes it
Have any of you ever done like as many games as are in this area on that day? You've done them all?
I
I think the most is 3.
I think I've done
I've
three.
done 2 in a day.
Well, it's baseball doubleheader. I think you can pull off a baseball doubleheader, a daytime doubleheader,
Yeah.
1
and
4
part of a
And part of a game in here.
game in here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
Well, you know,
I've never done it. I never.
That'd be tough.
That might be
if
something to
1
try
4
out.
and 7. Yeah. Well,
I'd pass out up in the press box. I'd be done. You know, just drinking the hot coffee and then it'd be out cold in my seat, and Russ would have to wake me up.
I would
Yeah.
be like, I don't know, elbows deep in some Swedish fish in the press box.
That's
Anyway, Dan, we can't thank you enough for coming on the show today. It really was great to have you on. I hope that everybody who checks out the show, whether they're a long-time listener or watcher or first time, that they feel like they've gotten to know you better. And I have to say that I think we've all gotten to know you a lot better. So, huge thank you for
and thanks to the Flyers for helping us out here.
You're right. And Russ, Anthony Bundy.
Yeah,
I got to get used to calling you.
You will, Dan.
But thank you for having me. And if I can just say one thing, because I'm looking at this team out here and a combination of Comcast, Spectacor, the Flyers. This is an amazing group of people. And what they do day in, day out, whether it's on social media or video or to support you guys, is just amazing stuff. And what we have in store because of their talents and skills, we're just excited to continue to grow, get better, and tell the story of the Flyers, Comcast, Spectacor, and this great city and region. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Dan Hilferty. Thanks for checking out Snow the Goalie this week. We'll be back again later this week, where we'll dissect everything that we just talked about in that interview. If you came onto the stream late, feel free to go back, check it out from the start. You can listen to what we talked about prior to the show going live. But we will be back later this week, Bundy, Ant, and myself. In the meantime, you can follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music. If you have a favorite app that's not one of those that you get your podcasts, Snow the Goalie is there. It is, after all, the Only Flyers podcast. You can also subscribe to the show on YouTube, youtube.com/@SnowTheGoalie. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel and hit the little bell so you get a notification anytime the show goes live. We have a lot of interesting things in the pipeline. We have some interesting shows coming up. We have a few things we can't tell you about yet, but we're working on them. Sometimes we'll do a show that's in the morning, like the last one we did that was at 6 a.m. Sometimes we do one like tonight, or at 6 at night. Make sure you subscribe, hit that bell, ring the bell so you're notified anytime we go live. You can go leave a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts. You can go on to Spotify's app and you can leave the 5-star rating. That would also help us. If you have a Flyers fan in your life who doesn't listen to shows or doesn't watch YouTube usually, share them the link and then let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, merch is available. Shop.snowthegoalie.com. We have a streak going. Every single day since we launched the store, there have been people ordering things, which is cool. So big thank you to anybody who ordered out there. And we'll be back, like I said, later this week here on Snow the Goalie, the Only Flyers podcast. So for Ant, @Ant SanFilippo, for Bundy, @CTherien6, I'm Russ, @JoyOnBroad. Thanks again for listening, maybe even watching Snow the Goalie, the Only Flyers podcast. We'll talk to you again later this week.